Welcome to episode 4 of Keep It Real. I'm your host, Alexis Pacheco, and with us tonight we have a beautiful new guest as well as a beautiful in-studio live audience. We're filming here at Hudson Church at our live studio in Guttenberg, New Jersey. As always, our goal is to share, learn, encourage, and bless all of the listeners to come. Let's take a moment to welcome everyone here in person again. You guys look fantastic. All right, so tonight's topic is mental health and beyond, and it's a topic that was requested by many of our viewers. The first viewer to put in the request was someone who actually lives out in Miami, Florida, so she couldn't be with us physically tonight. However, we sent her a little gift from the Keep It Real team as promised, and we have a video clip of her receiving the gift so that we're gonna show now as we give her a proper shout out. So let's roll the tape.
Hey guys, Alexis told me she was sending me something really special for helping recommend this week's episode, Mental Health and Beyond. So I wanted to record myself opening it so we could all be surprised together. Came with a note. Thank you for being a real fan since day one. Alexis, I love you. And you know I love to keep it real. Oh my God, this is so sick. Check this out. You like it? I love it. Thank you, Alexis. We'll be riding this on the Vespa on the way to the beach. Ciao.
So thank you to Lauren for being a true Keep It Real fan since day one. We love her and can't wait to see her rocking her new Keep It Real swag on the beach. Okay, so fast forward, here we are tonight, and we saved this topic specifically for May because May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Our guest tonight is beyond qualified for the discussion. Her bio is very intense, guys, so please pray that I get it right because she has worked so hard to get where she is today, and she deserves this extensive introduction. She is a Columbia University trained licensed psychologist. Her areas of expertise include immigration and Latin psychology, generational, developmental, and complex trauma, particularly child abuse and health psychology. She has extensive clinical experience in treating professionals and with minoritized clinical populations, providing individual, group, couples, and family therapy. She is the director of the Psychological Center at the City College of New York. She serves on the Leadership Council of the Doctoral Program and the Diversity and Social Justice Committee. She is also on the Graduate Faculty of Arts and Sciences at the City University of New York. She is active in providing psychological evaluations for individuals seeking asylum in the state of New York and co-directs the Asylum Justice Program at the City College of New York. If that wasn't enough, she also currently has her own private practice. In her work, she incorporates the power of faith in the process of healing. Aside from her resume, she's a personal friend who I have had the honor to serve with previously when we were on the board of a women's nonprofit organization together. She is a true Keep It Real fan who makes time in her busy schedule to come to our live recordings time and time again, and we just love her. Let's bring out our guest, Dr. Diana Puñales Morejon. Diana, we're so happy to have you here tonight with us.
Of psychology with this incredible audience, and thank you all for coming. It's a real blessing.
Yes, Diana, I think we received a lot of requests for this topic because it's something that tends to get swept under the rug or overlooked in society. Mental health is something that seems like only recently has started getting more public attention. And since it's such a big balloon of a topic, there tends to be a lot of misinformation out there. So our goal tonight is really to hopefully provide some clarity and general awareness to our viewers. Before we dive in, Diana, I think it's important for the audience to understand when it comes to tackling mental health by a professional, what is the difference between the approach of a psychologist versus a psychiatrist or a therapist, and why did you lead towards the route of psychology yourself?
Sure, this is a really important question and an important distinction to have. Let me start sort of at the beginning, and then I can let you all know how come I chose to do this. And so a psychologist is a mental health clinician that has gone through at least 7 years of clinical training, including the completion of a research dissertation. And after 7 years, you apply for licensure and you're licensed as a psychologist. So it is a doctorate in psychology. A psychiatrist, on the other hand, is a medical doctor, not a doctor of psychology, a medical doctor who goes obviously through medical school, completes a residency, and perhaps does a specialization in psychiatry. And their main approach to treatment is through the use of psychopharmacology, which is the use of medications to treat different symptoms from depression to anxiety to trauma to phobias, basically any psychiatric. So it's the use of medication, whereas psychologists use talk therapy in order to treat any type of mental illness. Social workers and mental health counselors have a much briefer training. They have about a 2-year training, and then they work as counselors, not as psychologists, where they will deal with problems, for example, if you're going through a stressful time at work, or if you're going through a recent breakup. So much more condensed and simplified types of issues.
And why did you lead towards psychology?
So it's a really good question. So when I was in college, I double majored in psychology and biology. And there was a point where I was considering, should I go to medical school or not go to medical school? And what I really enjoyed was working with people. So I did research for a couple of years, and I was actually a genetic counselor. So I worked with families that needed education and support about working with children with special needs and with what was happening in their pregnancies. And I realized I really want to work with people long term. I really want to be able to help, because what I was seeing was individuals and families really feeling depressed and anxious and traumatized as a result of what they were going through. But I didn't yet have all the skills to do long-term work. And that's when I went back to graduate school and I got a doctorate degree.
Wow, that's an intense journey that you were on.
You can ask my family. They think I studied too much.
I can imagine. In my research for tonight's episode, I came across a lot of interesting data. And at a minimum, what I gauged is that the first step of successfully dealing with a mental health issue is acknowledging and sharing with someone that there's some sort of area of personal concern going on. And while in theory this sounds easy or almost self-explanatory, it's not, because unfortunately there are so many stigmas out there connected to this topic that prevent people from taking that first step. And then the problem becomes that maybe they start to suppress things, they stay silent, or they internalize whatever it is that's going on instead of releasing it or getting to the root of the problem. In general, different variables like your upbringing, your culture, your belief system, these things do definitely affect how we handle things. As a minister, I see that there are a lot of misconceptions about this topic, because in church, we preach all things are possible through Christ, and we preach healing and power over our lives, which is all true. But that doesn't mean that we're perfect. God did not create us to be robots. He gave us feelings and emotions, and it's important that we learn and equip others to process their struggles correctly, which sometimes may involve leading them to seek professional counsel. So, Dr. Diana, what are your thoughts on this, and how do you incorporate faith in your practice?
Sure. I mean, this is yet another important question. Therapy doesn't work unless there's faith. And that faith may look different for different people, but inherently the person has to believe that they are going to receive the kind of help that is going to be able to move them from a state of feeling distressed to a state of health mentally. And the way that faith plays a role is that if you can rely on that faith to see you through this, to guide you through the experience of obtaining therapy, that person will really be able to reach the goals that they want for themselves. The single most important protective factor against suicide, does anybody know what that is? The single most important protective factor? It's religion, it's faith, it's spirituality. And because faith gives us the ability to hope and to see the next day, that is the single most protective factor.
And just while on the topic of stigmas, something that, hold on, I lost my place. No, yeah, okay. You just totally threw me for a whoop there. But that was a great response. But something that I had touched on during the confidence episode of Keep It Real, which I'm passionate about, is the difference between how men and women handle mental health. Based on what I've observed and researched, women seem to be a little more successful at conquering mental health issues over men. And stereotypes aside, women just seem to be more in tune with taking care of themselves more so than men do. Doctor, what have you observed when treating men versus women in regards to mental health, coping, and recovery?
Sure. So this is such a pertinent question, and is a pertinent question in our society today, because I think that as much as we try to raise children to just be children, we end up socializing children as men, and we end up socializing them as women. And in that socialization come messages. And girls and women are socialized to express, right? And to share. And that feelings are really important. And when women get together, trust me, we talk a lot about feelings. We talk about that a lot, right? Men, on the other hand, and young boys are socialized differently. They're socialized, keep it inside, because that is what strength means, right? You're not going to be strong if you show your weakness. And feelings, for some young boys and men, are seen as it's a weakness to show that you're feeling sad, or that you're feeling down, or that to even cry. And so some of it has to do with our socialization, but the other piece has to do just in general with temperament. Women are relational, men are instrumental. And that means that women will value relationships, and relationships require the expression of feelings, whereas men are instrumental, let's just get stuff done. This is what you're feeling, this is a problem, let's find a solution really quick, right? And so the really quick part makes it challenging for some men to be in therapy because they want a quick fix. They want it, okay, I came and I told you my problem, can I fix it now? Whereas women are more willing to be thoughtful and intentional and really delve into what causes the problem and how did I even get here in the first place, right? And so those kinds of things, it's the reason why 75% of individuals that seek out therapy are women, 25% are men, and they do it on the down low. Please don't tell anybody I'm coming, right? I don't want anybody to find out, right? As if we would violate confidences, right? But it is a real issue. And that doesn't mean that because men aren't in therapy that they're not suffering. They are, but they're keeping it inside, and that's how we end up having things like road rage. We end up coming home and finding walls that are like a little bit punched, right? Or we end up having a little bit of anger outbursts. Almost 90% of individuals that are in anger management classes, can anybody guess the gender? Men. Because anger management is okay. We're not talking, they really believe that in anger management, we don't talk about feelings. What do we talk about? Of course we talk about feelings. Anger is a feeling. So there is a difference. And I think what we can do as a society, and what I try to do, is to destigmatize. Because Alexis, you're absolutely right. There is such a stigma. I have patients that tell me, my family doesn't want me to come to therapy. Why? They said that I'm not crazy, so why would I go see you? And I say, well, but I can't do therapy with somebody who's crazy. They're not going to be able to listen to me. So I don't work with crazy people. I work with people that are depressed, that are anxious, that are traumatized, that are in pain, that are in distress, that need to find their faith to keep going.
Yeah, and that's great. That's a great comparison and a great way of looking at, you said destigmatizing, that's the phrase you used, and definitely something that we should all try to do in society. And switching gears a little bit, I wanted to get into different variables of life that can cause a disturbance to our mental health. I think for people who aren't knowledgeable on the subject, when you hear the term mental health, your mind sort of jumps to extreme cases, and we tend to overcomplicate what it entails, or we overlook the little things that we can do daily to keep ourselves in check. There may be certain transitions or experiences in our lives that don't necessarily seem like a cause for concern on the surface. But depending on each individual person and how they process those situations, it could maybe spiral if they're not being proactive about it. Some examples could be moms who experience postpartum blues, or a person who moved here from another country speaking a different language, or a career change, let's say. I'm talking about areas where maybe you had an issue for a select period of time versus an ongoing trauma. Dr. Diana, what suggestions would you give in identifying the difference between someone who maybe they're just going through a rough patch versus someone who may need to seek counseling?
Yeah, no, this kind of question is one that we think about all the time. Having a rough patch is part of life. Like, I don't think there's a single person, myself included, in this room that can't say they haven't had a rough patch in their life. It's part of sort of the stumbles that we take. But what happens? We might have a support system, right? We might have a partner, a family, a close circle of friends, a community, right? That helps us not stumble and come back up on our feet. So stumbles are fine. If everybody who stumbled ended up in therapy, I promise you, we don't have enough. I can tell you right now, we don't have enough psychologists. No, or therapists, or counselors, or social workers, or anything, right? But what makes the difference between a life stumble and when you really need more long-term care is if you see yourself being unable to sleep or sleeping too much, if you see yourself losing your appetite or overeating. So remember, anything in the extremes, not good. If you see yourself having difficulties concentrating and attending, and you see that you no longer enjoy the things that used to bring you pleasure and joy and a sense of community in life, if you see yourself in a place where everything causes you anxiety and you can't stop worrying about even little things, and this type of feeling persists day after day after day, that's not a stumble. That's something real. That is something that is happening to you. And even if other people can't see it, and other people may not be attuned to it, you know it because you're going through it. You're living through that pain. You're living through that distress. And human beings, we're really good at hiding stuff. We can make pretend really well. We can still show up to work and be hurting inside. We can still show up and take care of our families and our minds are exploding. But that doesn't mean that something is not happening inside. And so that situation, when it's persistent, when it's intense, and when we feel utterly alone, right? That's when faith comes in, that's when support systems come in, and that's when you go speak to somebody that is trained to help you.
Yeah, those were all great points, and just something that came when you were talking about the rough patches and the stumbles, and that's why it's so important, the power of a testimony. You know, to share, to be able to share what those stumbles
Yes.
are instead of hiding them.
Yes.
You really never, you don't know how much of a blessing you could be to someone else when just not even knowing, not trying to do it, just by sharing something that you went through or something that you overcame, and how important it is in a community to do that with one another instead of, being ashamed of it, or
That's exactly
just like, let's pretend that never happened. And so, yeah, those are all great points and suggestions. Thank you. While on this topic, I know that based on the questions we received on social media and just in talking to people about mental health, there is a need out there for guidance on how to deal with loved ones who confide in us with their mental health concerns. It's a huge responsibility when someone we love tells us they're going through a depression or grief, or maybe they're feeling overwhelmed by something, for example, and they choose to open themselves up about it and reach out to help from us. I know that for myself, I have friends, acquaintances, brothers and sisters in Christ that have opened up to me about these types of feelings or thoughts, and in my own strength, my advice always falls short. Before I give anyone any sort of guidance, I pray on the situation first, and I ask God to show me, what does this person need from me? And sometimes God has told me, Alexis, you are not the person to solve this person's problem. You're not the one to get through to them. And when that happens, I still lift them up in prayer. I'll sometimes ask them if we can pray over the situation together. And I ask God to reveal to me or to them directly what they should do or who they should seek counsel from. Dr. Diana, can you give the audience some general recommendations from a professional standpoint on how to guide people who open up to us about their mental health concerns?
Sure. If you're a good listener, you know people are going to come up to you and share their feelings, because being a good listener means that you have the capacity to make that person feel comfortable and to trust you. So if you know that you are this way, count on family, on friends, on community members coming to you and wanting to speak to you. But what Alexa said is really pivotal, which is there comes a point where even the person who's a really good listener, who's a really trusting person, who's really committed to wanting to help, they also have a limit, right? And some types of problems can be dealt with. Sometimes you'll go to a friend and you'll say, hey, I'm going through this, can you give me some advice? And your friend or family member may really give you solid advice. But there is a cap when we're dealing with much more serious and long-term issues, because that is a huge burden and responsibility, and you don't want to say something wrong.
Yes. And the other spectrum of this topic, which is also equally important, if not more important, is when we find ourselves in situations where we have a loved one who is showing signs of concerns, but they're bottling it up, or maybe they're brushing us off, or maybe they don't want help because they think that they're fine, even though their behavior may be showing another sign. In my experience, when you have to be careful how you approach these situations, because if you come in too hot with certain people, you can lose that window of opportunity with them. And when you're dealing with people who are defensive or people who maybe just lack self-awareness, it can feel like you have to walk on eggshells to deal with them. Doctor, can you give the audience some examples of some conversation starters that they could possibly use if they have a friend or family member that they may be concerned about regarding their mental health?
Yes, no. This is the person who you can witness is going through a hard time, but they're not able to share it with you, or they're not ready to get help. That is the most challenging situation that we encounter as clinicians. And if the person is not ready, they're not going to benefit from therapy. They really have to be ready, and they have to be ready inside. And so in situations like that, my advice is you give the person space while you're giving them support. And an example is, I know you, and you don't seem like yourself, and you might not be ready to talk. But when you are, I'm here, right? Keep it simple, and Keep it simple, but keep it real.
There it is. There it is. There it is. One last point I wanted to touch on in our conversation is about treatment and misinformation. Overall, there is a lot of information available now at our fingertips through our phones regarding mental health that it could be somewhat overwhelming to try and navigate through it all. On the one end, you have apps that are literally designed to help you be proactive about your self-health. And I've come across ones even faith-based, which is great. But then on the other end, you have people who are not qualified giving their opinions on social media. Or now you have these AI machines that are coming out in the future, which they're creating to use as mental health diagnostic tools. Doctor, what tips could you provide to those navigating through all of this so that they're a little bit more successful in achieving their goals?
Absolutely. So look, I'm old school. I believe in person to person, Zoom to Zoom, which is the new thing now. But I ask everyone to use caution in this way. Apps can be helpful. We're in a world where apps rule everything, right? But apps can also be used unwisely if we come to depend on them as if this is the truth, right? Apps can be useful in obtaining information, in seeking out resources, in finding a support group, right? For those kinds of things. And the more that we can promote mental health care and mental health, that's where you're going to not have boys be told all the time, don't cry, don't show your feelings, and little girls just crying all the time, right? So apps give us information, but they shouldn't be the only way that you get care. And nothing will, I know this from doing this for many years, nothing will ever replace one-to-one, because there is a difference when we can make a human connection where you can see me and I can see you. And at the same time, I don't want to say, like, there are people that live out in wherever that they don't have access to a psychologist for 100 miles. So using an app gives them at least some information, a source of support, connecting with someone. But realize the common word in all of this is connection. And as long as we have connection, and we have to have faith that what we are embarking upon is going to help us, those are the two best tips. And you always don't just stick to one thing, and consult with each other, consult with friends. Somebody may be using an app that's really good, and hey, I use this. Don't just go into this blindly, and never pay a lot for this, because that's the other way that you get caught, right? Subscribe to this plan, and for every month for $99.99, right? So just be mindful of all of this and not get caught in a trap.
So before we open up to audience questions, we're going to do a little something different. Normally, we engage the live studio audience throughout the show with questions, but today we thought it would be more beneficial to have Dr. Diana lead us in a little self-reflection exercise. This is something that both our in-person audience can participate in, as well as our viewers. So now I'm going to give her the floor, and she'll just take over.
So I thought, just to get you thinking about your own mental health and things that you want for yourself, and I'm just going to ask everyone, just for a moment, this is not going to take long, it's not going to be hokey or anything, just to close your eyes for a second. And I'm going to just ask you questions. I want no answers, but just to reflect upon. And my first question to you is, who am I really? And what concerns me the most about the future? And what are my hesitations right now? Am I holding onto something that I need to let go of? And if not now, then when do I let go of that? And what matters to me the most in my life? And how can I use my faith to guide my decision to seek out the help that I deserve? Thank you, everyone.
So we have another quick little surprise for our live studio audience. You'll notice when you came in, you should have received a raffle ticket. Did everyone have one? If not, raise your hand. Okay, good. Great job. Keep it real, team. We're going to do a little giveaway in which Dr. Diana is going to choose the winning tickets. And the winner is going to receive one free consultation with her, which you can use for either yourself or for someone else that you want to bless. So, the magic box, is that it? Okay. Everyone has their ticket? Okay.
Okay. So I go here. Okay.
All right, wow. Okay. The winning tickets, 367008.
Oh my God! Oh,
Congratulations.
delighted.
Thank you so much, and congratulations on winning the giveaway.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to open up the floor to questions from the audience. For those tuning in, we had our live studio audience submit anonymous questions throughout the show. We also took questions from our followers on Instagram. Let's bring out our beautiful MC, Alexandra. They're still coming in.
Yeah, you can keep submitting your questions. I might not be able to get to all of them. Some of them are kind of similar. So we're going to go through Instagram first. We had followers that submitted questions through our story. So the first question comes from Rita T. Passion. And her question is, what can we do to bring joy to ourselves?
Oh, it's a great question. The first thing we can do is to always be authentic. When we try to be something that we're not, it automatically does not bring us joy. The other thing is to find something that we know we like and not deprive of us that. I don't mean if we like to buy, a $500 pair of shoes, maybe we can't afford it, but find something affordable that you really like, that you really enjoy, and don't deprive yourself of that. It's the small things, right? We sometimes think of joy, I have joy if I go here, or if I do that, or I eat here. And we forget that sometimes joy is something really simple, like reading a good book, right? Or calling up a long lost friend. And so be authentic, and B, find something that you really like and do it. Do not hold back.
Awesome, thank you. Next question is also from Instagram, from KVM Flaca. And her question is, what can you do if the support doesn't help?
So this is a great question. Sometimes the support doesn't help because it is not a good fit. It is really important that when you take the step to go into therapy, with my patients, you always get to meet me first. That's it. You meet me, we have a conversation. If you feel it's a good fit, that we're going to be able to work together, then you proceed. And even when you select somebody that you're working with, it still has to work out, right? This is different. You're going to tell that person some of the most intimate and personal details of the pain you've been suffering. And if you don't feel heard and supported and helped, of course the support's not going to work. Change. Literally. Find the right person. It's got to be a good fit.
Next question is from Lauren Sita. And her question is, any recommendations on finding a good therapist? It's hard to find someone you can trust and vibe with. So what are the best
absolutely.
resources to find them?
So there are a few resources that I would recommend. One of the best places to find a psychologist is to go on, one word, psychologytoday.com. And there you can look through psychologists. You can find which psychologists are for a fee, which ones accept insurance, and you actually can look and read their bio. So that's like the easiest way to do it. And they'll give you like this: am I taking new patients? My phone number, my address. Do I work in person? Do I work by Zoom? That's the easiest. Psychologytoday.com. They don't give me a commission or anything. This is just like straight out. This is what the field uses. The other thing to do is, if you have insurance, whether it's a private insurer, Medicare, or Medicaid, go to your provider. They literally have an obligation to help connect you to a provider. And you don't have to stick with that provider. If you don't like that provider, you go back to their insurance because you're paying a premium for that insurance. They need to provide you with a list. And mental health care can be expensive. And so always try to use the resources that you have. So psychologytoday.com, and also go to your insurance carrier.
Awesome. Thank you. A question from the audience is, what are some general recommendations to calm down your anxiety and intrusive thoughts in that moment?
Yeah. So in the moment, one activity that really works when you're having an anxiety attack is your breathing. Because when you're anxious, you're really susceptible to hyperventilating. So you purposefully slow down your breathing and you count. We do a square where you go 1, 2, 3, 4, down, 2, 3, 4, over 2, 3, 4, up 2, 3, 4. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. And sometimes it even helps if you put your hand right underneath your diaphragm and you actually feel the movement, because it's your hand touching your body and you can actually regulate your breathing. And when you're doing that, you have to believe, this is where faith also comes in, you have to believe that what you are doing is going to help you. The other thing that you can do is visualization. If you're really anxious, you got to break that circuit of anxiety and you start, right? So if I'm really anxious, and I start counting, oh my God, there's a camera, and there's a fire alarm, and there's a window, and there's a screen, and there's Pastor Renee is back there. Change it. Interrupt that circuitry, because you can really get into this panic mode and you will have a panic attack. And so you have to get yourself out of it, right? And doing things with your body, breathing, visualization, breaking that circuit is going to at least help a little bit. So that's fun.
And last question, it seems to be, I have a couple of them surrounding children and what to do if you have a child or a child that you think needs mental health. What's the best way to approach that when it's a child?
Sure. So the way that I work with children and the way that my clinic works with children is we actually speak to the parents first. The caregivers have to be an integral part. And it is often the case where a mom or a dad or a grandparent comes to us and says, I'm really concerned about my kid. They're having these tantrums, they're acting out at home, they're acting out in school. So common knowledge, if a child acts out at home, but at school they are the model child, that is actually a good situation, because that means that in school they are so pressed to be perfect so they don't get in trouble, and at home they know that their caregivers really love and support them, and they can show their authentic self, and they feel safe to show you the tantrum. The child that is perfect at home and has these blown out tantrums in school, it's the complete opposite. Home feels so unsafe that they have the perfect child because they suspect subconsciously that if they acted out at home, things would not be good. And so we always look at that dynamic, and we always encourage parents, if you think that something is off, trust your instincts. Nobody knows your kid better than you. So if you're suspecting that something is off, then listen to that and seek help for them.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All questions are in?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, all right. So that was great feedback. Dr. Diana, you mentioned one of the websites, but if you could just mention some resources so that we could share with the viewers for anyone who may be seeking professional counseling.
Absolutely. Another great resource, which is not just great, I should say, it's a really important resource, is in the United States, we now have a national hotline for anyone that has suicidal thoughts or gestures that the person or a family member or a friend could call on their behalf. And it's a nationwide number, and the number is 988. That's it. You dial 988. And that's a really important number to have, because you never know when somebody is in such a level of distress. They are so overwhelmed that they really need just that immediate attention. The other number is NAMI, NAMI.org, and I will give all these resources to Alexis, and they might put it on their website, which is an organization for family members of individuals with mental illness. And that's a really important piece because it's related to a question that Alexis asked before. What happens if you know that somebody needs mental health care and they're not getting the health care that they need, and they're not seeing that they have this problem? And this organization is also a nationwide organization that can help caregivers, parents, and family members to get the support that they need in order to be able to have a family member who's really in distress or overwhelmed. And then, of course, I mentioned to you before, psychologytoday.com.
Awesome. I will definitely get that
And I
on
can
the
give you
Instagram in some capacity for any of the viewers interested. Thank you, Dr. Diana, for coming on the show. It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
so
everyone.
much. Dr. Diana
Thank
Puñales
you.
Morejon.
Thank you, everyone. Pleasure. It's a real blessing to be here.
Time to unveil your talent with Keep It Real. For our June episode, we'll be hosting our first ever talent show, and we need you to show us what you got. Dancing, singing, poetry, comedy. Think outside the box. Everyone has a talent that the world needs to see. No age limits, no boundaries. Oh, and did I forget? $1,000 grand prize. We have 3 judges who can't wait to see what you got. Interested? Text talent to the number 201-503-5749, and we'll send you everything you need to know to get in the game. Will we unveil your talent? Text and find out, and don't forget, keep it real.